Today, I'm going to be talking about my classroom management plan. My classroom management plan is designed for a first grade classroom at Christian Academy because that's what I'm most familiar with, because that's what I've been with, and that's the classroom grade that I have worked with the most recently. So my classroom management plan is important, just like any other classroom management plan, because it helps keep you on track and helps give you time for other things in the classroom. It helps give you time for the actual content and to do fun activities with your students. So if you don't have a classroom management plan, then it gets really difficult to be able to do those things well and do any of them throughout the day because the time all adds up. The first part of my classroom management plan is my classroom layout and the organization of that. In short, my classroom layout consists of a horseshoe method with my desks. I will have this horseshoe method here, and in the middle will be a big rug where we'll have the morning meeting and any group activities, any group stories that I need them to all sit down for. At the top or at the front of the classroom is going to be the whiteboard at the most open part of the horseshoe. At the back of the horseshoe is going to be the C table, and that's where I'll do group work or assessments or reading groups, anything like that. On one side is going to be their cubbies where they'll have their take-home folders and their backpacks and lunch boxes. And then on the other side is going to be their bookshelves where we will have all the literacy and all the things that they're able to grab when they have free time, along with the reading corner where they can read if they're allowed to by the teacher. So my classroom rules that I decided to go with for this classroom, there's 5 of them, so they're easily countable, easily remembered, and they can count them all on one hand so they won't forget any. So the first one is called listening bodies, and it's about listening to the teacher and following directions. This is important because if the students don't listen to the teacher, then they won't hear the instructions and then they won't know what to do. If they don't know what to do, then this will cause them to get very just social and not want to do what they're doing. They'll get really distracted and they won't focus on the task at hand. The next one, number 2, is the respectful actions, and that's a rule saying that they'll respect their friends, their teacher, and themselves. This is important for the students because if they don't show respect to each other, then it could cause a lot of disruptions and a lot of fights and behavioral issues that will mess with your classroom management plan and mess with the organization and routines and procedures for the day. So that one's super important as well. With that one, I would make sure to explain what respect is to the students before introducing it so that they know exactly what I am expecting of them. The third one is the raised hands rule, and it's pretty self-explanatory, saying that they'll raise their hands when they want something from the teacher. This prevents a bunch of chaos and loud voices. If they're all yelling out at once, you won't be able to hear any of them. So this is why it's important to have them raise their hand. This is also something I would explain. I would explain all these on the first day of school. The fourth rule is the caring hearts rule, just basically saying that they'll be kind and share. And similar to the respect rule, if you don't have a rule like this or don't let the students know that this is what you expect, then it will cause a lot of behavioral issues and fights, which will then just disrupt everything in the classroom, and it'll create disunity and create chaos within the relationships in your classroom, and you don't want that because then that'll ruin the rest of the year and set you up on a not so great path. The last rule that I have, the 5th rule, is the excited minds rule, and I made this a rule because if the students feel embarrassed to know or embarrassed to be excited for what they're learning, then that's not going to help them succeed at all. We were taught in this class to have positive expectations for our students, and so that's why I made this a rule rather than a goal, because I want them to come in and be excited and not be ashamed of that, because the more excited they are to learn and the more excited I am to teach it, the better the classroom will go and the more smooth it'll be able to run. So the procedures, if I did list all the procedures that I would want in my classroom, it would last forever. So I listed my top 10 or 11. The first one is the first day of school procedure. This is where they'll line up and they will be greeted at the door. Before I go in to the door, I will explain that we want them to be quiet as they enter, because if the students aren't quiet when they enter, then it's probably going to get pretty loud and it'll set a bad precedent for the day. And so you want them to be excited but also not too loud in the morning. So what I would do is I would have them come in quietly and go straight to their desks after putting their things away. The first day of school and every day of school, I would introduce them or greet them at the door using their name, because that'll show that I care about them specifically and show recognition for them. These days are really critical for establishing the routines and the habits, the early months of going to school and practicing these routines and habits. The absent or tardy procedure is just where if a student's absent, they should look in their cubby to see any work that the teachers put in there from the day before. And there are going to be things that the teacher will need to explain or do with the student, and that's on the teacher to do that. Because they are so young, they can't do everything on their own. And when a student's tardy, they'll go straight to their desks, and the teacher will help them get started on whatever the class is already doing. If they try to do something different, it could distract the students unless they're directed by the teacher. The greeting procedure, I kind of already mentioned. They'll come in quietly, and as they come in, they'll be greeted by the teacher one by one, by name, and I would love to, as a teacher, try to say something about them, a compliment or something like that, just to encourage them and make them feel special as they enter my classroom. The next procedure is after entering the classroom, which I already talked about as well. They'll come in, they'll put their backpack and take-home folder in their cubbies and hung up, and they'll go right to their desk and get ready for morning meeting, which is something we'll do as a class. So morning meeting is where they'll all sit on that circle rug in the middle, and this is where we'll go over the calendar, the date, the day, the week, the weather, all these things. Because they're in first grade, we want to go over those so that they're used to hearing those, as well as this is a great spot for us to talk about how they're feeling, if there's any issues, if they're feeling sad or happy about something. This is a way for me to, a time designated where I can get to know my students more and see what's going on in their lives. And hopefully they'll feel comfortable sharing that information with me at that time. The next procedure is the transition and attention grabbing procedure, where I will share this information with the students that need to hear it first. So before I transition, any student that is required by their IEP, or I think it would be helpful for them to know that we're transitioning, I would let them know that we're doing it a few minutes before so they're not caught off guard and they're not worried. And then I would use a attention grabbing saying like class, and have them respond yes, or something like that. And have their response affirms that they heard me and that they're ready and they've got my attention, or I've got their attention, and they're ready to move on and listen to what I'm going to say. So after that, I would tell them exactly what I needed them to do. I would make sure to tell them what to do before having them go do it, because once you have them start something, they usually get distracted and stop listening to you. The lineup and travel procedure throughout the day is going to be where they'll line up in their number order, so it makes it easier to account for them. And we'll just go through the halls quietly. I'll make sure that they are putting a bubble in their mouth like this so that they don't make noises. Other ones, like moving about the classroom, if they want to get a pencil, sharpen their pencil, tissue, anything like that, it has to be when the teacher is not talking. Got a bathroom procedure, which is basically when they line up, and I'll tell them to go to the bathroom one by one based on their number, and I'll only send students in there based on how many stalls there are. So if there's 2 stalls, 2 students will go in there at a time. At the end of the day, the students will be instructed to clean up and put away whatever, put their folders in their backpacks, and they'll sit back down. And then at the end of the day, I'll want to talk to them about how they thought the day went. And this is where they'll fill out their dojo points and any class rewards we'll talk about, which I'll mention in the rewards and consequences part of this video. The emergency procedure is basically already decided for me based on the school. We'll follow exactly what the school does, and we'll have drills for this so that the younger students, because they're in first grade, will be ready and know exactly what to do for these procedures. The classroom rewards and consequences focuses on one system and one online system called Class Dojo. You create a profile for your class and then for each student in the class, and so they get points. You can add points and then take away points. When you add points, you can choose a specific reason or type your own in for each student that you're giving points to, and it makes a specific sound so the students catch on to that sound. So whenever they hear that, they know that a student got a point. The same thing for the negative points when you take something away. You can put the reason that you take it away, and it's a different sound. So when they hear it, they know that you as the teacher are putting points in, and they know that they need to stay on task to get those points. The cool thing about this is that the teachers can share this information with the parents. They can send pictures, videos, messages, and the parents can keep up to date on their points, as well as communicate with the teacher through those messages, videos, and pictures. What I would do is at the end of the day, I would have them fill out more boxes on their little 100-point chart, and they would color them in. So if they got 3 points that day, they would color 3 in and keep adding. And throughout that chart on paper, throughout that paper chart, there would be 3 or 4 different like surprise spaces, and then once they color up to that point, they'll get to choose a prize, whether that be iPad time, lunch with the teacher, extra recess, and they can redeem, or they get a ticket when they land on one of those, and then they can redeem those tickets for any reward like that. So that is my classroom management plan, and yeah, that's it.